then we have this third category to sort of oversimplify things, which it sounds like the Japanese have put more time into thinking of, which is the autumn of life. That we have a very goal-oriented young part of our lives. We have a very appreciation-slanted middle part of our lives. So the question is, how exactly do we embrace this autumnal time of life? When that is often considered a time of decline or even decay. So keeping in mind that we might have caught some of my listeners off guard, thinking that this would be a travel-oriented Pico Iyer conversation, keeping in mind that you've meditated very deeply on impermanence, what's something that you can leave listeners with on how to best frame one's worldview to encompass autumn?
Well, when you began talking just now, and you were talking rightly about how we stress becoming, I was expecting you to say what we don't train people for is being. So we're training them very much for the future tense, and as you were saying, that's exactly what you need when you're 15 or 25 or even 35, but we're not training people to find their delight in where they are right now, in living in the present tense. And one of the things I notice about Japan is people have a great gift for appreciation, and they don't pitch their expectations too high. What I find, going back and forth between California and Japan, in many ways I feel that they're almost opposites. And California is a great land of expectation, but what I run into a lot here is disappointment, that people have beautiful ideals, but when reality can't be transformed to exist in accordance with those ideals, they're crushed or brokenhearted. My Japanese friends pitch their expectations much lower, but therefore they're really happy at whatever comes along. And I think in my book called The Beginner's Guide to Japan, I talk about how when I first arrived in Japan in 1985, I said to myself, well, America is the land of can, possibility. Japan is the land of must, duty and responsibility. And I think that might be a little simplistic. It's the kind of thing you think of when you're in your 20s and you arrive in a very different place. But I think what Japan is aware of is that freedom is best enjoyed within limits. In other words, that a sonnet is often more beautiful than free verse because it's got some shape to it. That famously, tennis is most fun when there's a net there. If there isn't a net, there's no game of tennis. And it's exactly the boundaries of life that are responsible for the beauties of life. If you're living in the future tense, well, tomorrow never arrives. So you never get your fulfillment. Or if you're living for that sense of becoming, as you said, I think I realized this when I was in the corporate world, and it's one reason I moved from my job at Time Magazine in Midtown Manhattan to an empty room on the back streets of Kyoto. So when I was at Time Magazine, when I arrived, I wanted to be a good writer, and then I wanted to write cover stories, and then I wanted to write the Man of the Year story. And each time I received an attainment, I thought, now I have to look to the next one. And I realized at some point that's never ending. I'm never going to be satisfied. I'm never going to be fulfilled because, if I won the Nobel Prize, maybe I would think, why can I not win the MacArthur Genius Grant or something beyond? And there's no end to that sense of goals, to as you were saying so well. And maybe just living in a small room with a very constrained sense of possibility, I'll be much more content, and I won't be restless. I'm probably one of the things I grew up with through my gypsy boyhood was restlessness, and I thought what I need is to be absolutely satisfied with what I have rather than hungering for what I could have, don't have. And a perfect example, it just strikes me as I'm talking to you, is that I'm sitting in my mother's house right now. And she has a very big house in the hills of Santa Barbara, and there are 3 whole rooms that are full of books. with the result that if ever I want to put my hands on vagabonding or some book I really want, I can't. It'll take me 6 hours to go through these 3 rooms, and I probably won't find it at the end of those 6 hours, and I'll have to go and buy a copy of a book that I already have. In Japan, in our tiny 2-room apartment, I have one shelf for books only, and I can always find every book I need within 6 seconds there. In other words, I'm not drowning under an overabundance of choice, and that having one shelf of books makes me much happier than having 3 whole rooms of books.